Have you ever witnessed a moment so unexpected that it changed someone's entire life forever? Before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of La Maison, one of Manhattan's most exclusive French restaurants. Alexander Wells, CEO of Global Communications International, checked his watch, 7:30 a.m. He preferred early breakfast meetings before the usual crowd arrived. The restaurant was nearly empty, with only a few tables occupied by business executives like himself. At 52, Alexander had built an empire spanning 6 continents. His silver-streaked dark hair and tailored suit projected the confidence of someone who had conquered the corporate world. But success had come at a price. 3 failed marriages and an estranged daughter who barely spoke to him had left a void that his wealth and achievements couldn't fill. "Your usual table, Mr. Wells?" asked Maurice, the maitre d' who had been serving him for years. "Yes, thank you. I'm expecting Mr. Tanaka from Tokyo Communications at 8. Maurice guided him to his preferred corner table with a view of Central Park. "Would you like to order now or wait for your guest?" "Just coffee for now, strong and black." As Maurice walked away, Alexander opened his briefcase to review the documents for his meeting. The Tokyo Communications merger would be his company's largest acquisition yet, expanding GCI's reach across Asia. But Mr. Tanaka was known for being difficult, and Alexander needed this deal to satisfy his increasingly demanding board of directors. A few minutes later, a young woman approached his table carrying a coffee pot. "Your coffee, sir," she said with a perfect French accent, pouring the steaming liquid into his cup. "Thank you," Alexander replied without looking up from his papers. "Would you like anything else while you wait? Perhaps our fresh croissants?" "They're made in-house every morning," she suggested, still in flawless French. Alexander glanced up, intending to politely decline, but something in her voice made him pause. She was in her early 30s, with chestnut hair pulled back in a simple bun. Her uniform was the standard black and white of La Maison's staff, but she carried herself with unusual poise. "No, thank you. Just the coffee for now," he replied in English. She nodded and turned to walk away when a well-dressed Japanese man entered the restaurant. Alexander recognized him immediately as Hiroshi Tanaka. "Mr. Tanaka," the waitress said in perfect Japanese, bowing slightly. "Welcome to La Maison. Your colleague is already here." She gestured toward Alexander's table. Alexander's eyebrows rose in surprise. Her Japanese was flawless, not the basic phrases a waitress might learn, but fluid and natural, with the correct honorifics and formal tones. Tanaka looked equally impressed as he followed her to the table. "Your Japanese is excellent," he commented in his native language. "Thank you," she replied with a humble smile. "I lived in Tokyo for 3 years." Alexander stood to greet his business associate. "Tanaka-san, good to see you. I see you've already met." "Elena," the waitress supplied. "Elena Russo." After seating Mr. Tanaka, Elena handed them both menus. "Today's special is Eggs Benedict with truffle hollandaise, but the chef can prepare anything you'd like. I'll give you a moment to decide." As she walked away, Tanaka leaned forward. "Impressive staff you have here in New York. Her Japanese is better than most of my American colleagues who've lived in Japan for decades." Alexander nodded, though La Maison wasn't his restaurant. He found himself watching Elena as she moved to another table where an older couple was speaking what sounded like German. To his amazement, she switched effortlessly into German, chatting with them about the weather and recommending dishes. The business breakfast proceeded as planned, with discussion of market shares and integration strategies. Alexander was making his case for the merger when he noticed a group of tourists at a nearby table struggling to communicate with another server. "Excuse me for one moment," Elena said to her current table, approaching the tourists. "Puedo ayudarles?" she asked in Spanish. The family's faces lit up, and they began asking questions about the menu, which Elena answered with ease. By now, Alexander was barely focusing on his meeting. He watched as Elena moved between tables, speaking what seemed to be a different language at each one. French to the couple by the window, Italian to the businessman on his phone, Russian to the elegantly dressed woman dining alone. "Remarkable," Tanaka commented, following Alexander's gaze. "Is this normal in New York restaurants?" "No," Alexander admitted, "not at all." When Elena returned to take their order, Alexander couldn't contain his curiosity. "How many languages do you speak, Elena?" She seemed taken aback by the personal question but answered politely. "9, sir. English, French, Italian, Spanish, German, Japanese, Russian, Mandarin, and Arabic." 9 languages, Alexander repeated, genuinely impressed. "And you're working as a waitress?" A flash of something, pride perhaps or defiance, crossed her face. "For now, I'm working on my PhD in international relations. This job helps pay the bills and keeps my languages sharp." Alexander's mind was already racing with possibilities. GCI had been struggling with their international communications department, especially after their previous polyglot director had left for a competitor. They needed someone who could navigate cultural nuances across multiple markets. "Your order, sir?" Elena prompted, her professional demeanor returning. "Oh yes, I'll have the eggs Benedict." "Same for me," Tanaka added. As Elena walked away, Tanaka smiled knowingly at Alexander. "You're thinking of recruiting her, aren't you?" "The thought had crossed my mind," Alexander admitted. "GCI needs someone with her linguistic abilities. She seems intelligent, but can a waitress handle corporate communications?" Alexander watched as Elena effortlessly managed the now busy restaurant, switching languages without hesitation, resolving a complaint from the Russian woman with diplomatic skill. She mentioned she's getting her PhD. I think there's more to her than meets the eye. Their breakfast arrived and business discussion resumed, but Alexander found himself repeatedly distracted by Elena. It wasn't just her languages, it was the way she carried herself, her quick thinking, her ability to read people and situations. These were qualities he valued in his executives. When they finished their meal, Tanaka seemed satisfied with the merger proposal. "I'll discuss this with my board. You've made a compelling case, Wells." "I hope to hear from you soon," Alexander replied, shaking his hand. After Tanaka left, Alexander remained at the table, nursing his 3rd cup of coffee. He observed Elena for another 20 minutes, noting how she handled a difficult customer in Mandarin, smoothly diffusing the situation while maintaining the restaurant's standards. When she brought his check, he made his decision. "Elena, I'd like to speak with you for a moment, if you have time." She glanced around the restaurant, which had quieted after the morning rush. "I can spare a minute." "I'm Alexander Wells, CEO of Global Communications International. We're a multinational corporation with offices in 43 countries." "I know who you are, Mr. Wells," she replied. "Your company's expansion into emerging markets was the subject of a case study in one of my classes." Alexander smiled, pleased by her knowledge. "Then you might know that we specialize in helping businesses communicate across cultural and linguistic boundaries. Yes, your localization services are industry-leading, though your recent attempts to enter the Middle Eastern market have faced challenges due to cultural missteps." His smile faltered slightly at her criticism, but he appreciated her directness. "That's actually related to what I wanted to discuss. GCI needs someone with your linguistic abilities and cultural awareness. I'd like to offer you a position as our Director of International Communications." Elena's professional composure slipped for a moment, her eyes widening in surprise. You can't be serious. You've observed me for less than 2 hours." "I've built a multi-billion-dollar company by recognizing talent, Elena. You speak 9 languages fluently, you're working on a PhD, and I've watched you navigate cultural sensitivities with ease. These are rare qualities, and I'm willing to pay generously for them." The restaurant had grown quieter, and nearby diners were beginning to notice their conversation. Maurice was watching with a concerned expression from his podium. "This is hardly the place to discuss this," Elena said quietly. "And I have responsibilities here. Alexander pulled out a business card and wrote his personal number on the back. "Call me when your shift ends. I'll have my HR department prepare an offer. The starting salary would be in the mid-six figures, with benefits and relocation allowance if needed." Elena took the card, her hand trembling slightly. "Mr. Wells, I appreciate the offer, but this is very sudden. I need time to consider it." "Of course. But I should warn you, I'm not known for my patience." He smiled to soften his words. "I believe you would be an invaluable asset to GCI, and I'm prepared to make it worth your while." As Alexander paid his bill and left a generous tip, the other diners whispered among themselves. It wasn't every day that a CEO recruited staff from a restaurant, no matter how exclusive La Maison was. "I look forward to hearing from you, Elena," Alexander said as he stood to leave. "Mr. Wells," she called after him, her voice steady despite the unexpected turn her morning had taken. "What makes you think I'd abandon my academic pursuits for your company?" Alexander turned back, studying her thoughtfully. "Because I'm offering you the chance to use all 9 languages every day, to travel the world, to shape global communications instead of just studying them. Theory is valuable, Elena, but I'm offering you practice on a global stage." With that, he walked out of La Maison into the bright New York morning, leaving Elena staring at his business card while the entire restaurant buzzed with speculation about what had just happened. Alexander's driver opened the car door for him, but before getting in, he glanced back at the restaurant. Through the window, he could see Elena already back at work, professional as ever, though her colleagues were clearly peppering her with questions. "Where to, sir?" his driver asked. "The office," Alexander replied, his mind already formulating plans for how Elena would fit into GCI's structure. He rarely made impulsive decisions, but something told him this one was right. Now he just had to wait for her call. As his car pulled into Manhattan traffic, Alexander realized he was looking forward to that call more than he'd looked forward to anything in a long time. Elena's shift ended at 4 that afternoon. She changed out of her uniform in the staff bathroom, her hands still trembling slightly as she buttoned her blouse. The business card Alexander Wells had given her felt heavy in her pocket, like it carried the weight of a life-altering decision. "You're actually considering it, aren't you?" asked Sophia, another waitress who had been bombarding Elena with questions all day. "I don't know," Elena admitted, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "It seems too good to be true." "Girl, men like Alexander Wells don't make offers like that unless they're serious," Sophia said, applying lipstick in the mirror. "Do you know what I would give for a 6-figure salary? My student loans would be gone in a year." Elena sighed. "It's not that simple. I've spent 6 years working toward my PhD. I'm only one dissertation away from completion, and Professor Harlow has all but promised me a position at Columbia after I graduate. A teaching position that pays what? $70,000 a year? Compare that to what Wells is offering." "It's not always about money, Sophia." "Easy to say when you're about to have it," Sophia retorted, but her smile took the sting out of her words. "Look, just call him. Hear what he has to say. You can always say no." Elena nodded, knowing her friend was right. As she left the restaurant, she pulled out her phone and Alexander's card. The spring air was crisp and cherry blossoms bloomed in Central Park across the street. She found a quiet bench and dialed the number, half hoping it would go to voicemail. "Alexander Wells," came the immediate response, his voice as confident over the phone as it had been in person. "Mr. Wells, this is Elena Russo, from La Maison." "Elena," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I'm glad you called. Have you considered my offer?" "I have questions first," she replied, attempting to maintain some control over the situation. "What exactly would this position entail, and why offer it to a waitress you just met?" "Fair questions," he acknowledged. "The Director of International Communications would oversee all of GCI's cross-cultural business strategies. You'd work directly with our international clients, ensuring that their messages translate not just linguistically but culturally across markets. And my qualifications for this role would be..." "Serving you breakfast?" Alexander chuckled. Your 9 languages for starters, your PhD studies in international relations, and yes, what I observed this morning, your ability to read people, to shift seamlessly between cultures, to handle difficult situations with diplomacy. These are rare skills, Elena, and they're exactly what GCI needs right now. Elena watched a family stroll by, the parents holding the hands of a little girl who was pointing excitedly at the blooming trees. I'm still working on my dissertation, I can't abandon that. You wouldn't have to. GCI has a generous education support program. We'd work around your academic schedule. In fact, your dissertation could benefit from the practical experience. It sounded reasonable. Too reasonable. Mr. Wells? Alexander, please. Alexander, she corrected herself. Most CEOs don't personally recruit staff, especially not from restaurants. Why are you really offering me this position? There was a pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was more measured. Our previous director left suddenly for a competitor, taking key staff with him. We're in the middle of several major international deals, including the Tokyo Communications merger you saw me discussing this morning. I need someone exceptional, and I need them now. So I'm convenient. You're extraordinary, he countered. Convenient would be promoting from within or poaching from a competitor. Taking a chance on a waitress with a PhD is neither convenient nor conventional. Elena couldn't help but smile at his candor. I would need to talk to my academic advisor before making any decisions. Of course, but I do need an answer soon. Could you come to my office tomorrow? I'll have HR prepare a formal offer and you can see our operation firsthand. She hesitated only briefly. What time? 10 o'clock? I'll send a car. That won't be necessary. I can find my way to GCI Tower. As you wish. Ask for me at reception. After ending the call, Elena sat for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. From serving coffee to potentially directing international communications for one of the world's largest corporations, all in the span of a day. It was surreal. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate, Maria. Did you call the rich guy? Are we millionaires yet? Elena smiled and texted back, meeting him at his office tomorrow, not millionaires yet. Maria's reply came instantly. Wear that blue dress, the one that makes you look like you could run the world. The next morning, Elena stood in front of GCI Tower, a gleaming skyscraper that dominated the midtown skyline. She had, in fact, worn the blue dress Maria suggested, paired with sensible heels and minimal jewelry. Her dissertation notes were in her bag. She had a meeting with Professor Harlow at 2, regardless of how this meeting went. The security guard directed her to an express elevator that required a special key card. As she ascended to the executive floor, Elena's stomach knotted with nervous energy. What was she doing here? The elevator doors opened to reveal a sleek reception area with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of Manhattan. Before she could approach the receptionist, Alexander emerged from a conference room, engaged in conversation with an older man. Elena, he said, breaking off his conversation to greet her. Right on time. This is Howard Mercer, our CFO. Howard extended his hand. So, you're the linguist Alexander hasn't stopped talking about. Impressive credentials. Elena shook his hand firmly. Thank you, though I'm still not sure why I'm here. Alexander gestured for her to follow him. Let me show you around, and then we can discuss the details. The tour was comprehensive. State-of-the-art communication centers, translation departments for each major language group, cultural consultancy teams, and design studios that adapted marketing materials for different regions. Our problem, Alexander explained as they walked, is coordination. Each department works in isolation. We need someone who can see the big picture across languages and cultures. They ended in his spacious office where a woman was waiting with a folder. This is Diane from HR with your offer package, Alexander said. I'll give you a moment to review it. As Alexander stepped out, Diane walked Elena through the details. The salary was even higher than Alexander had initially suggested, with bonuses, comprehensive benefits, flexible hours to accommodate her studies, and a clear path for advancement. Any questions? Diane asked after her presentation. Yes, Elena said, still processing the numbers on the page. Why me? There must be hundreds of qualified candidates with corporate experience. Diane's professional smile didn't waver. Mr. Wells has an instinct for talent. And between us, your languages are impressive, but it's your academic background that's particularly valuable. Your dissertation on cross-cultural communication ethics is directly relevant to challenges GCI is facing. Elena looked up sharply. How do you know about my dissertation topic? Mr. Wells had us do some research after your meeting yesterday. Standard procedure for executive hires. Before Elena could respond, Alexander returned with coffee. Have you reviewed the offer? Yes, Elena said, accepting the cup he offered. It's very generous. But you still have concerns, he guessed, sitting across from her. I do. This is happening very quickly. And while the flexibility for my studies is appreciated, the reality is that this position would demand significant time and energy. Alexander nodded. It would. I won't pretend otherwise. But your dissertation on cross-cultural ethics in business communications is exactly what GCI needs right now. You researched me, Elena stated, not entirely comfortable with the idea. Of course I did. I don't make offers like this based solely on serving ability, no matter how many languages you speak. His tone was unapologetic. Your academic articles are insightful. Your analysis of how Western corporations misinterpret Eastern communication styles was particularly relevant to our current challenges. Elena felt a mix of flattery and unease. So this isn't just about my languages. You want my research. I want your mind, Alexander corrected. The languages are a bonus. Elena, I built GCI on the principle that effective communication crosses borders. But lately, we've lost sight of that. We've become too focused on profit margins and not enough on understanding the cultures we work with. His sincerity surprised her. And you think I can change that? I think you can remind us of what matters. Your academic work shows a deep understanding of cultural nuances that many of my executives lack. Combined with your practical abilities I witnessed yesterday, you're exactly what GCI needs. Elena took a sip of her coffee, using the moment to gather her thoughts. I would need some guarantees about my dissertation, and I'd want to be involved in the Tokyo Communications merger. From what I've read, there are significant cultural pitfalls that could derail it. Alexander's eyes lit up at her condition. Already thinking like a director, I'd welcome your input on the merger. I haven't accepted yet, Elena reminded him. But you're negotiating terms, he pointed out with a slight smile. That suggests you're considering it seriously. Elena couldn't deny it. The opportunity was too intriguing to dismiss outright. I'll need to discuss this with my advisor, and I'd want a trial period, 3 months, where either of us could end the arrangement if it's not working. Done, Alexander agreed immediately. When can you start? I have responsibilities at La Maison. I couldn't leave them without at least 2 weeks' notice. Admirable but unnecessary. I'll speak with the owner. He's a friend. I'm sure he'll understand the opportunity this represents for you. Elena raised an eyebrow. Do you always get your way, Mr. Wells? Alexander, he corrected again. And no, not always, but often enough. His smile was surprisingly boyish for a man of his position. So, do we have a deal? Elena looked down at the contract, then back at Alexander's expectant face. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a complete change of direction. Yet something about Alexander's confidence in her abilities made the leap seem possible. 3-month trial, she reiterated, and I maintain my academic schedule. Agreed. She took a deep breath and signed the contract. Then yes, we have a deal. Alexander's smile broadened as he reached across to shake her hand. Welcome to GCI, Director Russo. As their hands met, Elena felt a strange certainty that her life had just changed irrevocably. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen. Elena's first day at Global Communications International arrived with unexpected speed. After Alexander had spoken with Maurice at La Maison, her 2 weeks' notice had been waived with surprising good grace and a promise that she could return to Waitress on weekends if she wished. Her academic advisor, Professor Harlow, had been cautiously supportive, seeing the potential for Elena's dissertation to benefit from insider access to a multinational corporation's communication strategies. "Just don't let them consume you," Harlow had warned. Corporations like GCI have a way of making academic pursuits seem trivial by comparison. Now, as Elena rode the executive elevator to the 50th floor, those words echoed in her mind. She had spent the weekend preparing, researching GCI's current projects, and reading everything she could find about the Tokyo Communications merger. Her new wardrobe, purchased with an advance from her signing bonus, felt foreign against her skin, the tailored blazer a far cry from her waitress uniform. When the elevator doors opened, Diane from HR was waiting to escort her to her new office. "Mr. Wells wanted to greet you himself, but he's been called to an emergency board meeting," Diane explained as they walked through the bustling floor. Staff members glanced up curiously as they passed, clearly wondering who the new face was. Elena's office was spacious and bright, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the East River. A sleek desk, the latest computer equipment, and a small conference table occupied the space. On the desk sat a welcome basket with gourmet coffee, international chocolates, and a handwritten note from Alexander. "Elena, looking forward to seeing you revolutionize our approach to international communications. Welcome aboard, Alexander." "Your team will be here at 10 for introductions," Diane said, handing Elena a tablet. "This has your schedule, company directories, and access to all relevant project files. Your assistant James is right outside. He'll help you get settled." Before Elena could process that she now had an assistant, a young man appeared at the door with a friendly smile. "Director Russo, I'm James Chen. I've prepared briefings on all current projects and arranged meetings with the heads of each regional division throughout the week." "Thank you, James," Elena replied, trying to project a confidence she didn't entirely feel. "And please call me Elena." "Of course, Elena. The Tokyo Communications merger documents are loaded on your tablet, flagged by priority. Mr. Wells mentioned you'd want to review those first." James's efficiency was both impressive and intimidating. Elena wondered what he really thought about his new boss, a woman who had been serving breakfast a week ago. As James left, Elena sank into her ergonomic chair, allowing herself a moment to absorb the sudden change in her circumstances. From waitress to executive in 7 days, it felt surreal. She had just begun reviewing the Tokyo merger documents when a knock at her open door made her look up. A middle-aged man in an impeccable suit stood there, his expression pleasant, but his eyes sharp with assessment. "Victor Zhao, VP of Asian Markets," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "I thought I'd welcome you personally before the team meeting." Elena stood to shake his hand. "Elena Russo, thank you for coming by." "I understand you speak Mandarin," he said in that language, his accent native. "Yes," she replied in fluent Mandarin, "though I'm more comfortable with the Beijing dialect than Cantonese." His eyebrows rose slightly, impressed despite himself. "Alexander mentioned your linguistic abilities, but it's always good to verify." Switching back to English, he added, "I've been handling the Tokyo Communications merger personally. I assume Alexander has brought you up to speed?" Something in his tone suggested he didn't expect her to know much. Elena decided to be direct. "I've been reviewing the documentation," she said. "The cultural integration strategy seems concerning. Tokyo Communications has a traditional corporate culture built on personal relationships and consensus building. GCI's proposed rapid restructuring would likely face significant resistance." Victor's pleasant expression flickered. "That restructuring was my recommendation based on 20 years of experience in Asian markets." 20 years of impressive experience, Elena acknowledged. "But with respect, Mr. Zhao, the approach might have worked in Singapore or Hong Kong, but Japan requires a different touch. Hiroshi Tanaka's leadership style suggests he values harmony over efficiency. Victor studied her for a long moment. I see Alexander didn't exaggerate your confidence. Let's see if your insights match it. He gestured to the tablet. I look forward to your input at the strategy meeting this afternoon. 2 o'clock, main boardroom. After he left, Elena released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Victor clearly resented her sudden appointment and perceived interference in his territory. She would need to tread carefully. By the time her team assembled at 10, Elena had reviewed enough of the merger documents to have serious concerns. The 7 people who filed into her office represented various aspects of international communications, from translation services to cultural consulting. Thank you all for coming, Elena began, determined to make a good first impression. I know my appointment was unexpected, and you're probably wondering who I am and what I bring to GCI. We're certainly curious, said a woman who had introduced herself as Rebecca, head of European communications. It's not every day Alexander Wells personally appoints a new director. Elena nodded, acknowledging the elephant in the room. I have a somewhat unconventional background. Until recently, I was a PhD candidate in international relations, focusing on cross-cultural communication ethics while working as a waitress to support my studies. She paused, noting their reactions ranging from skepticism to curiosity. Alexander offered me this position after witnessing my work with international clients. I bring 9 languages and an academic understanding of cultural communication dynamics. What I lack in corporate experience, I hope to balance with fresh perspective and willingness to learn from each of you. Her honesty seemed to ease some of the tension in the room. Elena continued, I've been reviewing the Tokyo Communications merger and I have concerns about our approach. I'd value your thoughts. For the next hour, Elena listened more than she spoke, asking pointed questions that revealed both the strengths and weaknesses of her team. Rebecca proved knowledgeable but rigid in her thinking. Miguel, the Latin American specialist, offered creative solutions. Aisha, responsible for Middle Eastern markets, demonstrated a nuanced understanding of cultural sensitivities. By the end of the meeting, Elena had a clearer picture of both her team and the challenges ahead. When they filed out, Rebecca lingered behind. That was well handled, she said. Most new directors come in making declarations rather than asking questions. I'd be a fool to ignore the expertise in this room, Elena replied honestly. Rebecca smiled slightly. Victor's going to be your biggest challenge. He's been angling for a senior VP position, and he views the Tokyo merger as his ticket. I'm not trying to undermine him, Elena assured her. I just want the merger to succeed. In GCI, those can be the same thing. Rebecca's tone was matter of fact. Just be prepared. Victor has allies on the board. At 2 o'clock, Elena entered the boardroom for the strategy meeting. Alexander was there, deep in conversation with Howard Mercer and several board members. Victor sat opposite, his expression neutral, but his posture tense. Alexander's face brightened when he saw her. Elena, perfect timing. We were just discussing the cultural integration aspects of the Tokyo merger. As Elena took her seat, she noticed the subtle dynamics in the room, the divided loyalties, the carefully maintained alliances. She might be new to corporate politics, but her years studying international relations had taught her to read such situations. Victor has proposed an aggressive restructuring of Tokyo Communications post-merger, Alexander continued. I understand you have a different perspective? All eyes turned to Elena. This was clearly a test, and from Victor's barely concealed smile, he expected her to fail. Elena opened her tablet. With respect to Victor's expertise, I believe we need to reconsider our approach. She displayed a slide showing Tokyo Communications' organizational structure. Their corporate culture is built on consensus and collective decision-making. Our proposed changes would dismantle that overnight, creating significant resistance. She switched to another slide. I suggest a phased integration over 18 months, preserving key relationships while gradually implementing efficiency improvements. We'd see slower initial returns but greater long-term success and employee retention. Victor leaned forward. That timeline is unacceptable. The board expects cost synergies within 6 months. And they'll get them, Elena countered. But through harmonization rather than disruption. I've prepared an alternative financial model. She displayed the projections. The initial savings are indeed lower, but by month 9, we actually outperform the aggressive approach, because we avoid the productivity losses associated with cultural resistance. The room fell silent as the board members studied her numbers. Alexander's expression remained neutral, but Elena caught a glint of approval in his eyes. Howard Mercer broke the silence. These projections assume high retention of Tokyo's management team. Yes, Elena agreed. Their relationships with clients and staff are our most valuable assets. Lose those and we're just buying market share at a premium. The discussion continued for over an hour, with Victor challenging Elena's assumptions and Elena defending her approach with a mixture of academic research and practical observations from her morning with Tanaka. Throughout, Alexander remained largely silent, allowing the debate to unfold. Finally, he raised his hand to end the discussion. I think we've heard compelling arguments on both sides. Elena's approach offers a more sustainable integration, while Victor's promises faster returns. I suggest a compromise. We adopt Elena's phased timeline but accelerate certain elements to capture early synergies. It was a diplomatic solution that allowed both Victor and Elena to claim partial victory. As the meeting adjourned, Elena caught Alexander watching her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. Pride, perhaps, or something more complex. "A promising first day, Director Russo," he said as they walked back to their offices. "You stood your ground admirably." "Victor isn't happy," Elena observed. "Victor rarely is," Alexander replied with a slight smile. "But he respects competence, even when it challenges him. You've earned a measure of that respect today." As they reached her office, Alexander paused. "Dinner tonight? To discuss next steps on Tokyo." Elena hesitated, sensing that this invitation blurred the line between professional and personal. "I have dissertation research to review." "Bring it along," he suggested. "We can work together. I'm genuinely interested in your research and how it might benefit GCI." His enthusiasm seemed sincere, and Elena found herself nodding. "All right, but somewhere quiet where we can actually work. My penthouse has an excellent view and absolute privacy. 7 o'clock?" Before Elena could formulate an appropriate response to what increasingly sounded like a date rather than a business meeting, Alexander had continued down the hall, leaving her wondering exactly what she had agreed to. At precisely 7 o'clock, Elena stood in the private elevator that would take her to Alexander's penthouse. She had changed after work, opting for a professional but less formal outfit. Dark jeans, a silk blouse, and a tailored blazer. Her dissertation notes and laptop were in her bag, a deliberate reminder that this was a working dinner. The elevator opened directly into Alexander's penthouse, a breathtaking space with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Manhattan skyline. The decor was minimalist but warm, with leather furniture, original artwork, and subtle lighting that created an intimate atmosphere. Alexander greeted her with a glass of wine. He had also changed into more casual clothes, designer jeans and a light sweater that somehow made him look younger than he had in the office. "Right on time," he said, handing her the wine. "I appreciate punctuality." "A habit from academia," Elena replied, accepting the glass. "Professor Harlow locks the door precisely at the start of each seminar." Alexander smiled. "Sounds like someone I'd get along with. Come, let me show you around." The tour was brief but revealing. The penthouse was impressive without being ostentatious, reflecting a refined taste rather than a need to display wealth. One room, however, stood out, a library with walls of books, comfortable reading chairs, and a large desk. "My sanctuary," Alexander explained. "When the corporate world becomes too much, I retreat here." Elena examined the shelves, surprised by the eclectic collection. Philosophy, history, literature in multiple languages, not what she had expected from a CEO whose public image was all business. Dostoevsky in the original Russian, she noted, running her finger along a well-worn spine. Impressive. My mother was Russian. She insisted I learn her language and appreciate her culture. Something flickered in his eyes. A memory, perhaps, or a regret. Do you read Russian literature? Yes, though my Russian isn't as strong as my other languages. I find Dostoevsky challenging but rewarding. Alexander nodded approvingly, like most worthwhile things in life. The moment felt unexpectedly personal, and Elena redirected the conversation. You mentioned discussing Tokyo communications? After dinner, he said, guiding her toward the dining area where the table was already set. I've prepared something simple. You cook? Elena couldn't hide her surprise. Alexander looked amused. Another unexpected talent? Yes, I cook. It's therapeutic, one of the few activities where I can focus on the process rather than the outcome. Dinner was indeed simple but expertly prepared. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and a quinoa salad that complemented the wine perfectly. As they ate, the conversation flowed more easily than Elena had anticipated, touching on her studies, his career trajectory, and shared interests in language and culture. What made you pursue so many languages? Alexander asked as he refilled her wine glass. Elena considered the question. Necessity at first. My mother was Italian, my father American. After they divorced, I split time between Rome and New York, switching languages with each move. That explains 2 languages. What about the other 7? We moved to Spain when I was 12. Then I discovered I had an ear for it. Each new language felt like unlocking a secret code, a new way of seeing the world. She smiled, remembering. By the time I was in college, I was addicted to that feeling. And the PhD in international relations? I wanted to understand not just how people communicate across cultures, but why they so often miscommunicate despite their best intentions. She hesitated before adding, my parents' marriage might have survived if they'd understood the cultural subtext beneath their words. Alexander nodded thoughtfully. Is that the focus of your dissertation? Miscommunication across cultures? Specifically, the ethics of communication in multinational business contexts. Elena set down her fork, warming to her subject. Western corporations often impose their communication norms on other cultures, creating ethical dilemmas. What's considered transparent in New York might be perceived as brutally direct in Tokyo. Hence your concerns about our approach to Tokyo communications, Alexander observed. Exactly. Victor's strategy isn't wrong from an American business perspective, but it fails to account for Japanese cultural expectations. The merger isn't just about combining assets, it's about integrating people with fundamentally different communication styles. After they finished eating, Alexander suggested they move to the library to discuss the merger in detail. He cleared a space on the large desk, where Elena spread out her notes and opened her laptop. I've been reviewing Tokyo Communications' internal documents, she explained, pulling up an organizational chart. Their decision-making structure is consensus-driven, with Tanaka as the final authority but rarely exercising it unilaterally. Alexander studied the chart, and our restructuring would disrupt these established pathways. More than disrupt, it would destroy them. We'd be asking executives who've spent decades building relationships to suddenly adopt a Western top-down approach. Elena opened another file. I've drafted an alternative integration plan that preserves their consensus model while gradually introducing our efficiency measures. As Alexander reviewed her work, Elena couldn't help but notice how different he seemed outside the office. More relaxed, more thoughtful, less the imperious CEO, and more a man genuinely engaged with ideas. It was disarming. This is excellent, he said finally. You've articulated concerns I had but couldn't properly identify. The board will need convincing, but with these projections, I think we can make the case. Victor won't be easily persuaded. Elena pointed out. Alexander's expression hardened slightly. Victor has been resistant to change for some time. His methods worked a decade ago, but Asian markets have evolved. He hasn't. Is that why you hired me? To challenge him? Partly, Alexander admitted, but more importantly, because GCI needs the perspective you bring. We've become too focused on quarterly results and lost sight of the human elements of international business. Elena was both flattered and wary. I'm not sure one person can change a corporate culture. Not alone, no, but the right person in the right position can start a transformation. His eyes held hers. I believe you're that person, Elena. The intensity of his gaze made her uncomfortable. She looked away, focusing on her notes. I should show you my research on similar mergers. There's a pattern of initial resistance followed by acceptance if the integration is handled sensitively. Alexander seemed to sense her retreat and allowed the conversation to return to safer professional territory. For the next hour, they discussed strategy, with Elena sharing insights from her academic research and Alexander contributing his business experience. As the evening grew late, Elena began gathering her papers. I should go. It's been a long day. Of course. Alexander helped her collect her materials. My driver can take you home. That's not necessary. I can get a taxi. At this hour, I insist. He pulled out his phone to message his driver, then hesitated. Elena, I hope I haven't made you uncomfortable. My interest in your work is genuine, not a pretext. Elena met his gaze directly. And my interest in this position is professional. I appreciate the opportunity you've given me, but I need to maintain clear boundaries. Understood. His tone was respectful, though she thought she detected a hint of disappointment. I value your contributions too much to jeopardize our working relationship. The elevator ride down was silent, and Alexander's driver was waiting as promised. As she settled into the luxurious car, Elena reflected on the evening. Alexander Wells was more complex than she had initially judged, not just the ruthless CEO of his reputation, but thoughtful, even vulnerable at times. Yet there was something unsettling about how quickly he had brought her into his world, how intensely he focused on her when they spoke. It was flattering, certainly, but also concerning. Elena had worked too hard for her academic credentials to become just another conquest for a powerful man. The car pulled up to her modest apartment building in Brooklyn, a stark contrast to the Manhattan penthouse she'd just left. As she climbed the stairs to her third-floor walk-up, her roommate Maria was waiting with eager eyes. Well, how was dinner with the billionaire? Did he propose yet? Elena rolled her eyes. It was a working dinner, Maria. We discussed the Tokyo merger. In his penthouse? Please, the man is interested in more than your brain. That may be, Elena conceded, but I'm interested in advancing my career and finishing my dissertation. Nothing more. Maria looked skeptical. You're telling me you feel absolutely nothing for this successful, apparently attractive man who plucked you from waitressing and made you an executive? Elena hesitated, remembering the moment in Alexander's library when he'd seemed almost vulnerable. What I feel isn't relevant. Professional boundaries are. So pragmatic, Maria sighed dramatically. At least tell me what his penthouse was like. As Elena described the spectacular view and Alexander's unexpected culinary skills, she found herself smiling at the memory. Despite her determination to keep things professional, she couldn't deny that Alexander Wells was beginning to intrigue her on a personal level, and that was precisely what worried her. Later, as she prepared for bed, her phone chimed with a text message from Alexander. Thank you for a productive evening. Your integration plan is excellent. I've scheduled a board presentation for Friday. Sleep well. Formal, professional, appropriate. Yet Elena found herself reading it several times before setting her phone aside. The line between mentor and something more was already beginning to blur, and she had only been at GCI for one day. How would she maintain appropriate boundaries over the coming months? With that unsettling question in mind, she drifted into a restless sleep, dreaming of Tokyo skylines and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see through all her carefully constructed defenses. Friday arrived with alarming speed. Elena had spent the past 3 days immersed in preparation for the board presentation, refining her integration plan and anticipating potential objections. Victor had been conspicuously unavailable, canceling 2 scheduled meetings with vague excuses about urgent client matters. Through office gossip, Elena learned he was meeting privately with board members, presumably to undermine her proposal. "Don't let him rattle you," Rebecca advised over coffee in the break room. "Victor plays the long game. He's been here 15 years and has survived 3 CEOs. I'm not trying to compete with him," Elena insisted. "I just want what's best for the merger." Rebecca gave her a pitying look. In this company, having a different vision than Victor Zhao is competing with him, whether you intend it or not. As Elena returned to her office, James intercepted her with an update. "Mr. Wells wants to meet before the board presentation. He's in his office now." Elena found Alexander reviewing documents, his jacket off and sleeves rolled up. Despite 3 days of minimal sleep, he looked energized rather than exhausted. "Elena?" he greeted her, standing. "How are you feeling about the presentation?" "Prepared," she replied, "though Victor seems to be lobbying against me." Alexander nodded, unsurprised. "Victor believes in his approach. He's not wrong to defend it." "But you disagree with him?" "I believe your approach offers better long-term results. The board needs to understand why." He gestured for her to sit. "I've been thinking about how to frame this. The directors respond to numbers, not cultural theory." "Which is why I've quantified everything," Elena assured him, opening her tablet to show him. "Expected retention rates, productivity impacts, client relationship metrics, all converted to projected revenue figures." Alexander reviewed her slides with approval. "Excellent. This speaks their language." He paused, studying her. "You've adapted quickly to corporate presentations. I've given academic talks for years. The principles are similar. Know your audience, anticipate objections, provide evidence. The stakes are somewhat higher here than at academic conferences," Alexander pointed out. "True. No one's stock options depend on my dissertation defense." Elena smiled, but her nervousness showed through. Alexander leaned forward. "Elena, you're going to be brilliant. You know this material better than anyone in that room, including me. Just speak with the same conviction you showed in my library." The reference to their dinner made her slightly uncomfortable, but his confidence in her was reassuring. "Thank you. I won't let you down." "This isn't about me," he corrected gently. "It's about what's right for GCI and Tokyo Communications. Remember that, and you'll do fine." At exactly 10 o'clock, Elena entered the boardroom alongside Alexander. 12 board members sat around the massive table, including Howard Mercer and Victor, who nodded stiffly in greeting. The atmosphere was formal, with little of the casual banter Elena had observed at smaller meetings. Alexander opened the session with a brief overview of the Tokyo Communications merger's strategic importance, then introduced Elena. As our new Director of International Communications, Elena Russo has developed an alternative integration approach that I believe warrants serious consideration. All eyes turned to Elena as she took her position at the head of the table. She connected her tablet to the projection system, displaying her first slide. "Thank you for the opportunity to present today," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "The Tokyo Communications merger represents a significant opportunity for GCI, but also a cultural challenge that, if mishandled, could undermine the value of our investment." For the next 30 minutes, Elena outlined her phased integration plan, presenting data on similar mergers and explaining the specific cultural dynamics at Tokyo Communications. She contrasted the traditional approach, advocated by Victor, with her more gradual method, highlighting the projected financial outcomes of each. While the aggressive restructuring promises larger immediate savings, she concluded, our data shows these are often illusory, as productivity drops and key staff departures erode value. The phased approach delivers more sustainable results and preserves the client relationships that make Tokyo Communications valuable in the first place. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then the questions began, pointed and challenging. "Your projections assume minimal executive departures," noted an older board member. "What evidence supports this assumption?" "Historical data from similar Japanese acquisitions," Elena replied, bringing up a comparative chart. "When cultural integration is prioritized, retention rates exceed 85% versus 40% with traditional approaches." "These figures are theoretical," Victor interjected. "My team has practical experience with Asian integrations. Theory doesn't always translate to reality." "Which is why I've consulted with actual Tokyo Communications executives," Elena countered. "These aren't just academic projections. They're informed by conversations with the people who will be affected by our decisions." This revelation raised eyebrows around the table. "You've been speaking directly with Tokyo executives?" Victor asked, his voice sharp. "With Hiroshi Tanaka's permission," Alexander clarified. "Elena has conducted cultural assessment interviews as part of her due diligence." The discussion continued for another hour, with board members dividing into factions. Some supported Victor's traditional approach, with its promise of quick returns. Others were persuaded by Elena's data on long-term outcomes. Throughout, Alexander remained largely neutral, allowing the debate to unfold naturally. Finally, the board chairman, a distinguished man named Arthur Reynolds, called for a decision. "We've heard compelling arguments from both sides. I propose we put it to a vote. All in favor of the phased integration approach presented by Director Russo?" 7 hands raised, including Alexander's. 5 remained down, including Victor's. "The phased approach is approved," Reynolds declared. "Alexander, please proceed with implementation planning. We'll expect regular updates on progress." As the meeting adjourned, Elena felt a complex mixture of triumph and apprehension. She had won her first major victory at GCI, but Victor's cold expression as he gathered his papers suggested the battle was far from over. Alexander touched her elbow lightly. "Well done. That was masterful." "Thank you for your support," she replied quietly. "You earned it on merit." His smile was warm. "This calls for a celebration. Dinner tonight?" Before Elena could respond, Victor approached them. "Congratulations, Director Russo. You've convinced the board to delay our return on a billion-dollar investment. I hope your theory proves correct in practice." "I hope so too," Elena said sincerely. "And I'd welcome your input on implementation. Your experience will be invaluable." Victor seemed taken aback by her conciliatory tone. "I'll be watching the results closely," he said, less hostility in his voice than before. With a nod to Alexander, he departed. "That was gracious," Alexander observed when Victor was out of earshot. "Most people would have gloated." "Alienating him serves no purpose," Elena replied. "Besides, he does have valuable experience. I'd be foolish to dismiss it." Alexander studied her with renewed interest. "You continue to surprise me, Elena Russo." She felt a flutter of something uncomfortably like pleasure at his admiration. "About dinner. I should check on my dissertation progress with Professor Harlow this evening. I've been neglecting my academic work this week." "Of course," Alexander said, though she detected disappointment beneath his professional tone. "Another time, perhaps." As Elena returned to her office, James greeted her with a bouquet of flowers. "These just arrived for you." The card read simply, "Congratulations on your first board victory. Your insight and grace under pressure are exactly what GCI needed. Alexander." Elena placed the flowers on her desk, unsure how to feel. The gesture was professional enough to be appropriate, yet personal enough to make her question Alexander's intentions. Or perhaps she was overthinking things, still adjusting to corporate culture after years in academia. That evening, as she met with Professor Harlow in his cluttered university office, Elena found her mind wandering back to the boardroom, to Alexander's supportive presence, to the moment of victory when she'd seen pride in his eyes. "Elena, are you listening?" Harlow's voice broke through her thoughts. "I asked about your access to communication records at GCI." "Sorry, Professor. Yes, I've been granted limited access for my research. It's been illuminating to see how theoretical models play out in actual corporate communications." Harlow studied her over his reading glasses. "You seem distracted. Is this position interfering with your academic focus?" "Not interfering," Elena assured him. "Enhancing it, actually. I'm seeing aspects of cross-cultural communication that I'd never have understood from outside." Harlow didn't seem convinced. "Just remember why you started this PhD. Corporate America has a way of seducing bright minds away from scholarly pursuits." His words echoed her own concerns. Was she being seduced? By GCI? By corporate success? By Alexander himself? The line between professional opportunity and personal entanglement seemed increasingly blurred. Later that night, as Elena worked on her dissertation in her Brooklyn apartment, her phone chimed with a text from Alexander. "Tokyo team arriving Monday. Tanaka specifically requested you lead the initial integration meetings. Your approach has already opened doors. Well done." Elena smiled at the message, feeling a surge of professional pride. Whatever her complicated feelings about Alexander Wells, she couldn't deny the exhilaration of seeing her ideas implemented on such a significant scale. She texted back a simple, "Thank you, looking forward to Monday," then returned to her dissertation with renewed focus. She could maintain this balance, corporate director by day, academic by night, and keep her relationship with Alexander strictly professional. At least, that's what she told herself as she drifted off to sleep, the memory of his proud smile following her into dreams she would not remember in the morning. Monday morning brought a nervous energy to GCI Tower. The Tokyo Communications delegation was arriving at 10, and the executive floor buzzed with preparations. Elena had spent the weekend immersed in Japanese business etiquette refreshers and reviewing detailed profiles of each visiting executive. "The conference room is ready," James informed her as she arrived. "Seating arranged according to the hierarchy chart you provided, with translation equipment in place as requested." "Thank you," Elena replied, setting down her bag. "And the welcome gifts?" "Delivered to their hotel rooms last night, each personalized as you specified." Elena nodded approvingly. The small, thoughtful gifts, selected based on her research of each executive's personal interests, were part of her cultural integration strategy. Building relationships would be crucial to the merger's success. Alexander appeared at her door, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit. "Ready for the big day?" "As ready as possible," Elena said, straightening papers on her desk. "Though I'm still concerned about Nakamura-san. His profile suggests he's the most resistant to the merger." "Which is why you'll be seated next to him at lunch," Alexander replied with a slight smile. "Your Japanese is better than mine, and we need him on our side." "No pressure," Elena muttered, but she returned his smile. The atmosphere shifted when the Tokyo team arrived. Led by Hiroshi Tanaka, the 8 executives entered the conference room with formal bows and carefully neutral expressions. Elena greeted each in Japanese, using appropriate honorifics and demonstrating the deep respect that Japanese business culture valued. "Russo-san," Tanaka said, switching to English. "A pleasure to see you again. Wells-san speaks highly of your understanding of our culture." "I've lived in Japan, but I'm still learning," Elena replied modestly, knowing that humility would be appreciated more than confidence. "I hope we can build a relationship that benefits both our companies." The initial meeting proceeded according to Elena's carefully planned agenda. Formal introductions, overview presentations, and strategic discussions, with plenty of time allocated for questions and clarifications. She had deliberately structured the day to alternate between formal meetings and more relaxed interactions, knowing that relationships in Japanese business were built during informal moments. During lunch in GCI's executive dining room, Elena found herself seated beside Kenji Nakamura, Tokyo Communications Operations Director, and, according to her intelligence, the executive most concerned about American management styles. "Nakamura-san," she began in Japanese, "I understand you're an avid baseball fan. Do you follow American teams as well?" His surprise at her knowledge of his personal interest was evident. "Yes, the Yankees, actually, though our Tokyo Giants remain my favorite." "I attended a Giants game during my time in Tokyo," Elena replied. "The atmosphere was incredible, very different from American baseball." What began as polite small talk evolved into a genuine conversation about cultural differences in sports, then business, and finally the merger itself. By dessert, Nakamura was speaking more openly than he had all morning. "Many of us fear being, swallowed up," he admitted quietly, "losing what makes Tokyo Communications special." "That's exactly what we want to avoid," Elena assured him. "The value of Tokyo Communications lies in its people and relationships. My integration plan is designed to preserve those while helping both companies grow stronger together." Nakamura studied her for a moment. "Wells-san chose wisely in appointing you to this role." Across the table, Alexander was engaged in conversation with Tanaka, but Elena caught him glancing in her direction, a look of approval in his eyes when he saw her deep in discussion with Nakamura. The afternoon sessions continued the momentum built during lunch. By 5 o'clock, when the formal meetings concluded, the atmosphere had transformed from cautious politeness to genuine engagement. Even Victor, who had joined for the afternoon strategy session, seemed impressed by the rapport Elena had established with the Tokyo team. "We would be honored if you would join us for dinner," Tanaka invited as the meeting adjourned, "to continue our discussions in a more relaxed setting." "We'd be delighted," Alexander accepted, with a glance at Elena for confirmation. The dinner, at an upscale Japanese restaurant, proved even more successful than the day's meetings. In the less formal environment, with sake flowing and conversation moving between business and personal topics, real connections began to form. Elena moved comfortably between Japanese and English, facilitating conversations and ensuring no one was excluded. "You navigate these waters with remarkable skill," Alexander murmured when they found themselves momentarily alone at the table, the others engaged in smaller group discussions. "This is what I studied," Elena replied. "Theoretical frameworks of cross-cultural communication made practical." "It's more than that," he insisted. "It's intuition, empathy. You don't just understand their culture, you respect it." His praise warmed her more than the sake had. "Thank you. But we still have a long way to go before the integration succeeds." "One remarkable day at a time," Alexander said, raising his cup in a small toast to her. By the time dinner ended, concrete progress had been made. Tanaka had agreed to Elena's proposal for joint integration teams, with paired executives from both companies working together on specific aspects of the merger. "A brilliant first day," Alexander said as their car pulled away from the restaurant. They were sharing his private car service, as Elena's apartment was on the way to his penthouse. "You've accomplished more in one day than most integration consultants manage in a month." "The real work begins tomorrow," Elena reminded him. "Today was ceremonial. Tomorrow we start addressing actual operational challenges." "Always focused on the next step," Alexander observed. "That's one of your strengths, but don't forget to acknowledge victories along the way." The car slowed outside Elena's apartment building. Before she could reach for the door, Alexander touched her hand lightly. "Elena, He hesitated, uncharacteristically unsure. "I want you to know how much I value what you bring to GCI. It's not just your languages or your cultural knowledge. It's your perspective, your humanity in a corporate world that often lacks it." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. For a moment, the professional boundaries she had carefully maintained seemed to waver. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means a lot." Their eyes held for a moment too long before Elena broke the contact, gathering her bag. I should go. Early start tomorrow. Of course. Good night, Elena. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Elena tried to steady her racing thoughts. The day had been a professional triumph, but Alexander's words and the way he had looked at her in the car left her feeling unsettled. The line between mentor and something more was becoming increasingly blurred. Maria was waiting up, eager for details. How was the big Japanese meeting? Did you dazzle them with your linguistic prowess? It went well, Elena said, dropping onto the sofa. Better than expected, actually. And the billionaire boss? Still just a professional relationship? Maria waggled her eyebrows suggestively. Elena threw a cushion at her. Yes, still professional. Mostly. Mostly? Do tell. There's nothing to tell, Elena insisted, though her warming cheeks suggested otherwise. He's my boss. He values my work. That's all. Right. Maria dragged out the word skeptically. That's why you're blushing like a teenager. Elena changed the subject, but later, as she prepared for bed, she found herself replaying the moment in the car, the warmth in Alexander's eyes, the slight tremor in his voice when he praised her. It was becoming harder to convince herself that what she felt was purely professional admiration. Her phone chimed with a text. Just heard from Tanaka. He's impressed and looking forward to tomorrow's working sessions. Your approach is already proving its worth. Sleep well. Alexander. Professional. Appropriate, yet still causing that flutter in her chest. Elena set her alarm and tried to focus on tomorrow's agenda rather than the growing complexity of her feelings for Alexander Wells. The next few days passed in a whirlwind of meetings, working sessions, and social events with the Tokyo team. Elena's integration plan was proceeding better than even she had anticipated. The paired executive teams were developing genuine rapport, and operational discussions were progressing without the resistance she had feared. Even Victor had grudgingly acknowledged her success. Your approach seems to be working, he admitted after a particularly productive session on technology integration, though I still have concerns about the timeline. Your concerns are valid, Elena replied, careful not to sound triumphant. Which is why I've incorporated contingency planning into each phase. We should discuss those in detail. Victor seemed surprised by her inclusion rather than dismissal of his perspective. I'd appreciate that. By Thursday evening, when the Tokyo team was scheduled to return to Japan, concrete agreements had been reached on integration sequencing, leadership structures, and communication protocols. The foundation for a successful merger had been established in just 4 days. A toast, Alexander proposed at the farewell dinner, raising his glass to the combined teams. To new partnerships and shared success. As glasses clinked around the table, Tanaka added his own toast. And to Elena Russo, whose understanding of our culture has made this partnership possible. Elena accepted the praise with appropriate modesty, but inside she felt a profound satisfaction. This was what she had studied for years, the practical application of cultural understanding to bridge divides and create mutual benefit. After dinner, as the Tokyo executives prepared to depart for the airport, Tanaka pulled Elena aside. Wells-san has found a treasure in you, he said. Your approach honors both our cultures. I look forward to working with you through this integration. The honor is mine, Elena replied sincerely. Your openness has made my job easier. When the Tokyo team had departed, the GCI executives gathered for a brief debrief. Howard Mercer, usually reserved with praise, was uncharacteristically effusive. Remarkable progress, he declared. The board will be pleased. Alexander, your decision to bring Elena on board has proven inspired. Elena deserves the credit, Alexander replied. Her integration plan and cultural approach made this possible. As the meeting concluded and executives dispersed, Alexander approached Elena. A moment of your time? In his office, Alexander closed the door and turned to her with a smile that made her pulse quicken. I won't keep you long, but I wanted to say this privately. What you've accomplished this week isn't just good for the Tokyo merger, It's transformative for GCI. You've shown this company a new way to approach international business. I was just applying what I've studied, Elena demurred. No, it's more than academic knowledge. It's your natural ability to connect with people across cultural divides. He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. Elena, I'd like to expand your role, beyond the Tokyo merger. In what way? I want you to develop a comprehensive cultural integration framework for all GCI international operations, a new approach that can be applied across our global business. Elena blinked in surprise. That would be a significant undertaking. And a significant promotion, Alexander added. You'd become Senior Vice President of Global Integration, reporting directly to me. The offer was stunning, a major promotion after less than 2 weeks at the company. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Alexander urged. You've proven yourself beyond any doubt this week. The Tokyo team respects you. Our executives have seen your value. This is the logical next step. Elena felt a mix of excitement and caution. What about my PhD? This would require even more of my time. We'll continue to accommodate your academic work, Alexander assured her. In fact, this new role could complement your dissertation perfectly. You'd have unprecedented access to international communication data across dozens of cultures. It was a compelling argument and the professional opportunity was extraordinary. Yet Elena hesitated, sensing that this promotion would bind her more tightly to GCI and to Alexander himself. Can I think about it? She asked. This is a significant decision. Of course. His expression was understanding. Take the weekend. We can discuss details on Monday. As Elena gathered her things to leave, Alexander added, Regardless of your decision, Elena, I want you to know how much I've come to value not just your work, but your presence at GCI. You've brought something to this company that we didn't even know we were missing. The sincerity in his voice left her momentarily speechless. Thank you, she managed finally. That means a great deal to me. Walking to the subway station, Elena's mind raced with possibilities. Senior Vice President at 32, with direct access to global communication data that would make her dissertation groundbreaking. It was an academic and professional dream. So why did she feel so conflicted? Perhaps because she sensed that accepting would irreversibly alter her carefully planned academic trajectory. Or perhaps because of the way Alexander had looked at her when he made the offer, with an intensity that suggested his interest in her extended beyond her professional contributions. As the subway rattled toward Brooklyn, Elena stared unseeing at the advertisements above the opposite seats. Senior Vice President Elena Russo. The title sounded impressive, but was it what she truly wanted? And could she separate her professional ambitions from her growing feelings for Alexander Wells? These questions followed her home, where not even Maria's excited reaction to the news could dispel her underlying uncertainty about the path she was choosing. The weekend gave Elena little clarity. She spent Saturday morning in the university library, working on her dissertation and trying to imagine how the senior vice president role would impact her academic goals. By afternoon, she found herself at a small cafe near Central Park, calling the one person whose advice she truly valued on professional matters. Professor Harlow? It's Elena. Do you have a moment to talk? For my star student? Always, came the warm reply. Though I've been beginning to wonder if you've abandoned academia entirely for corporate glamour. Elena smiled at his teasing tone. Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss. I've been offered a promotion, Senior Vice President of Global Integration. A low whistle came through the phone. After 2 weeks? Either you're performing miracles or this CEO is more smitten than I thought. It's not like that, Elena protested, though her warming cheeks suggested otherwise. The Tokyo merger integration is going exceptionally well. My approach has proven effective. I don't doubt your abilities, Elena. I've always known you were destined for remarkable things. The question is whether those things should be in academia or business. Can't they be both? She asked. The new position would give me unprecedented access to data for my dissertation. Perhaps, Harlow conceded. But corporate data comes with corporate agendas. Your research might benefit, but would it remain truly independent? It was a valid concern, one Elena had been wrestling with herself. I've maintained my academic integrity so far. 2 weeks is not a career, Harlow pointed out gently. What happens when corporate interests conflict with academic truth? When your CEO wants findings that support his business strategies rather than objective analysis? Alexander respects my academic work, Elena insisted. Alexander, is it? Harlow's tone sharpened slightly. Elena, I've seen brilliant academics seduced by corporate influence before. The money, the prestige, the feeling of real-world impact, it's intoxicating. But it often comes at the cost of intellectual independence. Elena sipped her coffee, watching people stroll through the park. So, you think I should decline? I think you should be honest with yourself about what you truly want, Harlow replied. You began your PhD with a passion for understanding cross-cultural communication as an end in itself, not as a tool for corporate profit. The practical application of theory isn't selling out, Elena argued. No, but forgetting why you developed the theory might be. Harlow sighed. You're at a crossroads, Elena. Neither path is wrong, but they lead to different destinations. Just be sure you're choosing your path, not following someone else's, no matter how charismatic that someone might be. After ending the call, Elena remained at the cafe, turning Harlow's words over in her mind. Was she being seduced? By corporate success? By Alexander? By both? Yet the Tokyo integration had been the most satisfying professional experience of her life, applying her academic knowledge to create real-world impact. Sunday brought no further clarity. Elena alternated between working on her dissertation and drafting ideas for the global integration framework Alexander had proposed. By evening, she had filled pages with notes but reached no decision. You're overthinking this, Maria declared, watching Elena pace their small living room. Senior vice president at 32, with a salary that could buy this entire building? Take it. It's not that simple, Elena replied. This changes everything. My academic trajectory, my work-life balance, Your relationship with Alexander? Maria supplied with a knowing look. Elena stopped pacing. There is no relationship. He's my boss. Right. Your boss who invites you to his penthouse, sends you personal texts at night, and offers massive promotions after 2 weeks. Maria crossed her arms. I'm not judging, but at least be honest with yourself. This isn't just about career decisions. Monday morning arrived with Elena still uncertain. As she rode the elevator to the executive floor, she rehearsed different versions of her response to Alexander, none of which felt entirely right. To her surprise, the floor was abuzz with activity. Staff members moved with unusual urgency, and through the glass walls of the conference room, she could see Alexander in intense conversation with Howard Mercer and several executives she didn't recognize. James appeared at her side, looking harried. There you are. Mr. Wells has been asking for you. Global media partners announced a hostile takeover attempt of Tokyo Communications this morning. The board is meeting in 20 minutes. Elena felt the floor shift beneath her. What? How is that possible? We just finalized preliminary integration plans last week. Apparently GMP has been planning this for months. They went public with a premium offer, 20% above market value. Tokyo's stock is soaring and their shareholders are pressuring Tanaka to consider it. The news was stunning. Global Media Partners was GCI's largest competitor, with a reputation for aggressive tactics and cost-cutting after acquisitions. If they acquired Tokyo Communications, they would not only block GCI's expansion plans, but gain a significant advantage in Asian markets. Mr. Wells wants you in the emergency board meeting, James added, handing her a tablet. These just came in from Tanaka. The message from Tanaka was brief but clear. Situation complicated. Board members divided. Need strong counter-narrative to GMP's financial offer. Cultural integration plan may be key differentiator. Please advise urgently." Alexander spotted her through the glass and motioned her in. His expression was grave but controlled. "Elena," he said as she entered. "You've heard?" "Just now. It's shocking." "And perfectly timed," Howard Mercer added bitterly. "They waited until our integration plans were public, then swooped in with their offer." Alexander made quick introductions to the executives Elena didn't know: GCI's legal counsel, PR director, and chief strategy officer, then outlined the situation. GMP is offering a significant premium, appealing directly to Tokyo's shareholders. Tanaka prefers our partnership but is facing pressure from his board. We need a compelling counter-strategy, and we need it before the markets close in Tokyo. Elena glanced at the time. That gave them less than 6 hours. "What's our current response?" she asked. "The obvious would be to increase our offer," said the strategy officer. "But that would strain our finances and potentially make the acquisition unprofitable." "And play directly into GMP's hands," Alexander added. "They're expecting a bidding war they can afford to win. We need a different approach." All eyes turned to Elena when Alexander added, "That's where you come in. Your cultural integration framework might be our strongest differentiator." The weight of responsibility settled on Elena's shoulders. This was no longer a theoretical exercise in cross-cultural communication. It was a high-stakes corporate battle with billions of dollars and thousands of jobs at stake. "I need everything we have on GMP's past acquisitions," she said, her decision-making clarity returning in the face of crisis. "Particularly their integration track records." As the team mobilized to gather information, Alexander pulled Elena aside. "I know this isn't how you expected to start your week, especially when you were still considering the SVP role." "The promotion is secondary now," Elena replied. "Saving the Tokyo merger takes priority." Alexander nodded, a hint of admiration in his eyes. "I knew you'd say that. For what it's worth, how you handle this crisis will likely make the board insist on your promotion, regardless of your decision." The emergency board meeting was tense. Directors fired questions about GMP's offer, Tokyo's likely response, and GCI's options. Elena listened carefully, noting the board's primary concerns were financial rather than cultural or strategic. When Alexander invited her to present her thoughts, Elena approached the situation with the analytical clarity that had made her an exceptional academic. "GMP's offer is financially attractive but strategically disastrous for Tokyo Communications," she began. "Their past acquisitions follow a predictable pattern: aggressive cost-cutting, centralization of decision-making, and rapid staff turnover." She displayed data from GMP's previous Asian acquisitions. In each case, key relationship managers departed within 6 months, and client retention dropped by an average of 40%. For a relationship-based business like Tokyo Communications, this approach would destroy their core value. The room grew quieter as Elena continued, outlining the stark contrast between GMP's integration approach and GCI's cultural framework. "Tokyo's executives have already experienced our commitment to preserving their business culture. Tanaka himself has endorsed our integration plan." "But will that overcome a 20% premium to shareholders?" asked a skeptical board member. "Not alone," Elena acknowledged. "But combined with a targeted approach to key stakeholders, it could. Tokyo's founding families still control 30% of shares, and they care deeply about the company's legacy and employees." She proposed a 3-pronged strategy: a modest increase in GCI's financial offer, a public commitment to the cultural integration framework, and a direct appeal to Tokyo's founding families emphasizing long-term value preservation over short-term financial gain. "We don't need to match GMP's offer," she concluded. "We need to change the conversation from immediate share price to long-term value creation." When she finished, the boardroom was silent for a moment. Then Alexander spoke. "I believe Elena's approach gives us our best chance. We can't win a pure bidding war with GMP, but we can win on culture, relationships, and long-term vision." The board voted to approve the strategy with one modification. They authorized a 15% premium rather than the 10 Elena had suggested, still below GMP's offer but more competitive. "Get this to Tanaka immediately," the chairman instructed, "and prepare for a public statement once Tokyo's market closes." As the meeting adjourned, Howard Mercer approached Elena. "Impressive analysis under pressure. Wells was right about you." "Thank you," Elena replied, still processing the whirlwind of events. Alexander was deep in conversation with the legal team, but he caught her eye across the room and nodded slightly, acknowledgement of a battle well fought, though the war was far from over. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Elena worked with the communications team to craft messages that would resonate with Tokyo's various stakeholders. She conferred with Tanaka via video call, coaching him on how to frame GCI's counteroffer to his board. The legal team prepared formal documents while the finance department refined the offer structure. By the time Tokyo's market closed, they had done all they could. Now they could only wait for Tanaka's board to meet and make their decision. It was after 8 when Alexander found Elena in her office, still reviewing cultural integration documents. "You should go home," he said gently. "There's nothing more we can do tonight." Elena looked up, suddenly aware of her exhaustion. "What if it's not enough? What if GMP wins?" "Then we'll adapt," Alexander replied, sitting across from her. "That's business. But you've given us a fighting chance we wouldn't have had otherwise." He studied her for a moment. "I know today's crisis derailed our conversation about the SVP position. Have you made a decision?" Elena hadn't expected the question amid the takeover drama. "I've been a bit preoccupied," she admitted with a small smile. "Of course," Alexander nodded. "It can wait until this situation resolves." "No," Elena surprised herself by saying. "I don't need more time. I want the position." The words came out with a certainty she hadn't felt the day before. Something about the day's crisis had crystallized her thinking. The academic perspective she brought to GCI's real-world challenges was valuable, perhaps uniquely so. She could maintain her intellectual integrity while applying her knowledge in ways that affected thousands of lives. Alexander's face brightened with genuine pleasure. "I'm glad. GCI needs you, Elena. Today proved that beyond any doubt." "I have conditions," she added quickly. "My dissertation remains a priority. I'll need flexibility for research and writing, and I want complete academic freedom with my findings, even if they sometimes challenge GCI's practices." "Agreed," Alexander said without hesitation. "Your academic integrity is part of what makes you valuable to us." He stood, offering his hand to seal the agreement. As Elena shook it, she felt the warmth of his grip and saw something in his eyes that transcended professional satisfaction. "We'll announce your promotion once the Tokyo situation stabilizes," he said. "In the meantime, I'm afraid we both have a long night ahead. Tanaka's board meets at midnight our time." Elena nodded, suddenly very aware of his proximity in her quiet office. "I should get some coffee then." "I have a better idea," Alexander replied. "Dinner in my office? I've already ordered from that Thai place you mentioned liking." The thoughtful gesture touched her. "That sounds perfect, actually." As they walked together toward his office, Elena felt a subtle shift in their relationship, still professional but warmer, more personal. The crisis had forged a deeper connection between them, and her acceptance of the SVP role had removed one layer of uncertainty. Whether this evolution was wise remained to be seen, but for now Elena was content to share Thai food with Alexander while waiting for news from Tokyo that would determine their professional future. The personal future, whatever it might hold, would unfold in its own time. The call from Tokyo came at 2:17 a.m. Elena had dozed off on the couch in Alexander's office, the remains of their Thai dinner still on the coffee table. She woke to the sound of Alexander's voice, low and intent, speaking into his phone. "I understand. Yes, that's acceptable. We'll prepare the announcement for morning." He ended the call and turned to Elena, his face illuminated by the city lights streaming through the windows. "They chose us." Elena sat up, instantly alert. "They rejected GMP's offer?" "Not entirely," Alexander clarified, sitting beside her. "Tanaka convinced his board to accept our lower bid with conditions. We need to increase our cultural integration team and provide contractual guarantees about maintaining their core management structure." Relief washed over her. "That's reasonable. It validates our approach." "It validates your approach," Alexander corrected. "Your cultural framework was the deciding factor. Tanaka said the founding families were particularly impressed by our commitment to preserving their corporate heritage." Elena couldn't suppress her smile. "So the merger is safe?" "Better than safe. Stronger." Alexander's eyes shone with victory and something more personal. "We've set a new standard for international acquisitions, and it's because of you." The moment stretched between them, charged with shared triumph and growing attraction. Elena became acutely aware of their proximity on the couch, of the late hour, of the intimacy of having fallen asleep in his office. Alexander seemed to realize it too. He stood, creating necessary distance. "We should both get some rest. Tomorrow we'll be busy with announcements and implementation planning." "Of course," Elena agreed, gathering her things. "I'll review the integration guarantees first thing in the morning." Alexander called his driver to take her home, and they rode the elevator down in comfortable silence, both exhausted but satisfied with the outcome. At the lobby, he surprised her by lightly touching her cheek. "Thank you, Elena. Not just for today, but for bringing a perspective to GCI that we desperately needed." The gesture was brief, professional enough to be appropriate, yet personal enough to make her pulse quicken. "Good night, Alexander." In the car, Elena replayed the events of the extraordinary day. She had committed to the SVP position, helped save a billion-dollar merger, and felt the undeniable progression of her relationship with Alexander from purely professional to something more complex. All while her dissertation waited patiently on her laptop, a reminder of the academic life she was not quite leaving behind. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. GCI publicly announced the successful counter to GMP's hostile takeover attempt, with financial analysts praising the company's innovative approach to acquisition strategy. Elena's promotion to Senior Vice President of Global Integration was announced simultaneously, generating significant industry attention. "The multilingual waitress becomes corporate executive," read one business publication's headline. Elena found the media attention disconcerting but focused on building her new department and implementing the Tokyo integration plan. Alexander was a constant presence, supportive and challenging in equal measure. Their working relationship deepened as they traveled together to Tokyo to finalize the merger details, then to GCI's European offices to introduce Elena's cultural integration framework to regional leadership. Throughout, Elena maintained her academic work as best she could, rising early to write dissertation chapters before breakfast and scheduling regular calls with Professor Harlow. But as the weeks stretched into months, she found herself repeatedly postponing research deadlines as GCI demands multiplied. "You've missed 2 chapter submission dates," Harlow noted during one of their calls, his tone more concerned than accusatory. "Is the corporate world consuming you already?" "It's temporary," Elena assured him. "Once the Tokyo integration stabilizes, I'll have more time for writing." But both knew the academic timeline was slipping, sacrificed to corporate urgency. Elena promised herself she would regain balance soon, once the initial frenzy of her new position settled. Her personal life underwent similar compression. Maria joked that their apartment had become a storage unit, as Elena rarely spent waking hours there. Friendships outside work faded into occasional text messages and rain-checked coffee dates. Most concerning was the evolving nature of her relationship with Alexander. Though both maintained professional boundaries at work, their constant proximity and shared challenges created an undeniable intimacy. Late-night strategy sessions, working dinners, and long flights seated together blurred the line between colleagues and something more. 4 months after the Tokyo crisis, Elena found herself in Alexander's penthouse again, reviewing global integration metrics over dinner. The pattern had become familiar, professional discussion that gradually shifted to more personal topics as the evening progressed. "Your approach is transforming how we manage international relationships," Alexander noted, refilling her wine glass. "The European leadership team has reported a 30% improvement in cross-cultural project outcomes since implementing your framework." "That's encouraging," Elena replied, genuinely pleased. "Though I'm concerned about the Middle Eastern offices, their adoption rate is significantly lower." "Cultural resistance to change," Alexander suggested. "Perhaps you should visit Dubai next month to address it personally." Elena hesitated. "Another international trip would further delay my dissertation. I'm already months behind schedule." Alexander studied her, concern evident in his expression. "Your academic work is suffering." "It's manageable," Elena insisted, though the strain in her voice suggested otherwise. "Elena." Alexander set down his glass, his tone softening. "I don't want GCI to derail your academic goals. Perhaps we can reduce your travel schedule or bring in additional support for your department." His consideration touched her. "Thank you. That might help." As the conversation continued, they moved to the living room, where Elena found herself sitting closer to Alexander than professional boundaries strictly warranted. The wine, the late hour, and months of growing attraction created a dangerous combination. "You've transformed GCI in ways I couldn't have imagined," Alexander said, his voice low and intimate. "Not just our business approach, but our culture. You've reminded us that behind every spreadsheet and strategy are actual people with different perspectives and values." "That was the focus of my academic work," Elena replied. "The human element in global communications. And now you've proven its practical value." Alexander's hand found hers on the couch between them. "Elena, I've tried to maintain professional boundaries, but I think we both know there's something more between us." The touch of his hand sent warmth spreading through her. For months, she had carefully avoided this moment, knowing the complications it would create. Yet she couldn't deny the connection that had been building since that first morning at La Maison. "Alexander," she began cautiously, "we work together. I report directly to you." "I know," he acknowledged. "It's complicated, but what I feel for you goes beyond professional admiration. I think you feel it too." Before she could respond, her phone rang, Professor Harlow's ringtone. Elena withdrew her hand reluctantly. "I should take this. He rarely calls this late." Alexander nodded, giving her space as she answered. "Elena," Harlow's voice was uncharacteristically serious. "I've just come from a faculty meeting. The committee is concerned about your dissertation progress. If you don't submit substantial work by the end of the month, they're considering placing you on academic probation." The news hit her like cold water. "That's only 3 weeks away." "I defended you as best I could, but the department has standards. They're questioning your commitment to completing the program." After ending the call, Elena returned to find Alexander watching her with concern. "Bad news?" "My dissertation committee is threatening academic probation," she admitted. "I've fallen too far behind." "What do you need? Time off? Research support?" "I need to focus on writing, which means stepping back from some of my GCI responsibilities." Elena ran a hand through her hair in frustration. "This is exactly what Harlow warned me about. Corporate demands overwhelming academic priorities." Alexander was quiet for a moment. "You're at a crossroads, Elena. Academia or business. Perhaps you can't fully commit to both simultaneously." His words echoed Harlow's earlier warning, yet coming from Alexander, they carried different implications. "Are you asking me to choose?" "No," he said quickly. "I'm acknowledging the reality you're facing. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you need to reduce your role temporarily to complete your dissertation, we can arrange it." His understanding should have reassured her, but Elena felt a creeping unease. For months, she had been sliding deeper into corporate life, further from her academic foundations. Alexander had become central to both her professional identity and her personal happiness. If she stepped back now, what would remain of either? "I need time to think," she said finally, "to rebalance my priorities." Alexander nodded, though disappointment flickered in his eyes. Whether from her professional dilemma or the interrupted personal moment, she couldn't tell. "Of course, take whatever time you need." As his driver took her home that night, Elena stared at the city lights blurring through the rain-streaked window. She had been naive to think she could maintain both worlds indefinitely. Something would have to give: her academic ambitions, her corporate success, or perhaps the growing feelings for Alexander that complicated both. Her phone chimed with a text from him. "Whatever you decide, know that you've already made an indelible mark on GCI. Your value to us, to me, transcends any title or role." The message both warmed and troubled her. The line between professional support and personal attraction had never been so thin, and Elena wasn't sure which side she wanted to be on anymore. As the car pulled up to her Brooklyn apartment, she made a decision. She would take 2 weeks' leave from GCI to focus exclusively on her dissertation. The distance would give her clarity not just about her academic future, but about Alexander as well. Some questions could only be answered from afar. The thought of separation brought an unexpected ache. In just a few months, Alexander Wells had become central to her daily existence. The prospect of stepping away, even temporarily, felt like losing a vital part of herself. That realization alone told her how necessary the distance had become. Elena's first week away from GCI felt like detox. She had moved temporarily into Professor Harlow's guest cottage, a quiet retreat on his property in Connecticut where she could focus solely on her dissertation. The absence of Manhattan's constant buzz of urgent emails and strategy meetings, of Alexander's compelling presence, all created a strange vacuum that was both liberating and disorienting. The first 2 days, she slept more than she had in months, her body reclaiming the rest it had been denied. By the 3rd day, she had established a writing routine, working from dawn until late afternoon with brief breaks for walks around Harlow's wooded property. "You look better already," Harlow observed over dinner that evening. "Less corporate, more academic?" Elena smiled. "Is there a visible difference?" "Indeed. The corporate look involves permanent furrows between the eyebrows and a tendency to check one's phone every 30 seconds. She laughed, realizing she had instinctively reached for her phone, which she'd purposely left in her room. "I suppose I've developed some corporate habits." "They can be unlearned," Harlow said mildly, "if that's what you want." That was the question Elena had come here to answer. What did she truly want? The academic path she had planned for years, or the unexpected corporate trajectory that had opened before her? And what about Alexander? Was he part of either future or a complication better left behind? Her dissertation progress was encouraging. Freed from distraction, she wrote fluidly, integrating her practical experiences at GCI into her theoretical framework. The real-world examples strengthened her academic arguments in ways she hadn't anticipated. "This is excellent work," Harlow commented after reviewing her latest chapter. "Your corporate experience has actually deepened your academic analysis. The section on hierarchical communication patterns in Japanese corporations is particularly insightful. The Tokyo Communications merger gave me unprecedented access," Elena acknowledged. "I observed dynamics that would have been invisible to an outside researcher." Harlow studied her thoughtfully. "Perhaps the dichotomy I presented, academia or business, was oversimplified. There might be a middle path." By the end of the first week, Elena had completed 2 substantial chapters, enough to satisfy her committee and lift the threat of academic probation. She should have felt triumphant, but instead found herself increasingly restless, checking her phone more frequently for messages from GCI, from Alexander. He had respected her request for space, sending only one brief text. The team misses your insight. Take all the time you need. A. Professional, appropriate. Yet she found herself reading it repeatedly, searching for subtexts and implications. On the 8th day of her retreat, Elena's phone rang with an unexpected call, Rebecca from European Communications. "I hope I'm not intruding on your academic exile," Rebecca began, "but something's happening that you should know about." Elena sat up straighter. "What is it?" "Victor's making moves in your absence. He's proposed temporary oversight of your global integration division while you're away. But there's nothing temporary about the changes he's implementing." A flash of alarm shot through Elena. "What kind of changes?" "He's dismantling your cultural integration teams, claiming they're redundant with existing regional structures. And he's revising the Tokyo implementation timeline, accelerating it significantly." "That could jeopardize the entire integration," Elena protested. "Tanaka agreed to our merger specifically because of the phased approach." "I know," Rebecca's voice was grim. "Several of us have raised concerns, but Victor has Howard's support. They're presenting it as operational streamlining." "And Alexander?" Elena asked, her heart beating faster. "What's his position?" There was a pause. "That's the other thing. Alexander's been distracted. He's spending most of his time on a new acquisition target in the Middle East. Victor's using his absence to push these changes through." After ending the call, Elena paced the small cottage, anger and concern battling within her. Everything she had built at GCI, the integration framework, the specialized teams, the cultural approach that had saved the Tokyo merger, was being systematically dismantled in her absence. And Alexander was allowing it to happen. Harlow found her an hour later, packing her bag. "Leaving us so soon?" "There's a situation at GCI," Elena explained, outlining what Rebecca had told her. Harlow listened without comment, then asked simply, "What does this tell you about your priorities, Elena?" The question stopped her mid-motion. "That I care deeply about the work I've done there. That I'm not ready to abandon it." "And about Alexander Wells?" Elena sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. "That I may have misinterpreted his support, or perhaps his priorities have shifted." "Perhaps," Harlow agreed. "But before you rush back to battle corporate intrigue, consider finishing what you came here to do. Your dissertation draft is nearly complete. Give it another 3 days, then face whatever awaits at GCI with your academic accomplishment secured." His advice was sound. Elena unpacked her bag and returned to her writing desk. For the next 3 days, she channeled her frustration and confusion into productivity, finishing her dissertation draft with a focus sharpened by the knowledge that corporate politics continued without her. The evening before her planned return to New York, Harlow invited her to dinner at the main house to celebrate her completed draft. As they shared a bottle of wine, he offered a final piece of advice. "The corporate and academic worlds operate by different values, Elena. In academia, the pursuit of knowledge is paramount. In business, it's results. Neither is inherently superior, but they require different parts of yourself." "I've experienced both now," Elena replied. "I value aspects of each." "Then perhaps your challenge isn't choosing between them, but defining how they intersect in your life. Create your own path rather than following either traditional trajectory." His words stayed with her as she prepared to return to GCI the following morning. Could she forge a path that honored both her academic integrity and her corporate effectiveness? And where did Alexander fit into this integrated future, if at all? The GCI tower looked the same as she approached it the next day, but Elena felt profoundly different. 2 weeks of academic focus had restored her clarity of purpose. She was no longer just responding to opportunities, she was choosing her direction. The executive floor buzzed with surprised greetings as she stepped off the elevator. James nearly dropped his tablet when he saw her. "You're back. We weren't expecting you until next week." "Change of plans," Elena replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Is Alexander in?" "He's in Dubai until tomorrow," James informed her, But Victor has called a division meeting in the main conference room. It starts in 10 minutes. Perfect timing. Elena dropped her bag in her office and reviewed her emails quickly, confirming what Rebecca had told her. Victor had indeed been restructuring her division, implementing changes that undermined the cultural integration approach she had developed. When she entered the conference room, the surprised silence was almost comical. Victor, standing at the head of the table mid-presentation, faltered visibly. "Elena," he recovered quickly. "We weren't expecting you. I'm just updating the team on some operational adjustments." "So I've heard," Elena replied pleasantly, taking a seat. "Please continue. I'm very interested in these adjustments." The tension in the room was palpable as Victor attempted to proceed, explaining the streamlining of the cultural integration teams and the accelerated Tokyo timeline. Elena listened without interruption, her expression neutral but her mind cataloging each deviation from her established framework. When Victor finished, he looked at her expectantly, clearly anticipating an emotional response. Instead, Elena smiled professionally. "Thank you for that comprehensive overview, Victor. Now, if you'll excuse us, I need to meet with my team privately." "These changes have been approved by Howard," Victor warned. "They're being implemented immediately." "I understand," Elena replied, her voice cool but controlled. "And I look forward to discussing them with Howard and Alexander when he returns. For now, I'd like to speak with my team." Victor hesitated, clearly weighing his options, then nodded stiffly and left the room. As soon as the door closed, Elena's team erupted in relieved exclamations. "We thought you might not come back," one admitted. "Victor said you were considering a full return to academia," another added. Elena held up her hand to quiet them. "I completed my dissertation draft, but my commitment to our work here hasn't changed. Now let's discuss what's actually happening with Tokyo Communications." For the next 2 hours, Elena listened as her team detailed the changes Victor had implemented and their potential consequences. The picture was concerning. The accelerated timeline was already creating friction with Tokyo's management, and dismantling the specialized cultural teams had left integration work fragmented and inconsistent. "Why would Alexander allow this?" someone asked. "He was so supportive of your approach." It was the question Elena had been asking herself for days. "I intend to find out," she said simply. That evening, Elena stayed late, preparing a detailed analysis of the risks Victor's changes posed to the Tokyo merger and the broader international strategy. As she worked, she couldn't help wondering about Alexander's role in all this. Had he genuinely been distracted by new acquisition targets, or had he deliberately allowed Victor to dismantle her work? And if so, why? Had their almost moment in his penthouse changed how he valued her professional contributions? The thought left a bitter taste. Around midnight, Elena's phone chimed with a text from an international number. "Just landed in New York. Heard you're back. Can we talk? My office, 7 a.m. A." Elena stared at the message, her emotions conflicted. Part of her wanted to confront him immediately, to demand explanations for his absence during Victor's power play. Another part feared what those explanations might reveal about his true priorities, and about whatever had been developing between them. She texted back a simple, "I'll be there," then continued working on her analysis. Whatever Alexander's explanation, she would face tomorrow with clear evidence of the damage Victor's changes were causing and a plan to correct it. As she finally left the office in the early morning hours, Elena realized that her time away had clarified more than just her academic priorities. It had shown her that the work she had built at GCI mattered deeply to her, enough to fight for, and her reaction to Alexander's apparent abandonment of her approach revealed feelings more complex than professional disappointment. The question now was whether those feelings could survive the conversation awaiting her at 7 o'clock. Elena arrived at GCI Tower at 6:45 a.m., the early morning light casting long shadows across the lobby. The building was quiet, with only security staff and a few ambitious associates present. She used the time to collect her thoughts, reviewing her analysis of Victor's changes one last time before heading to Alexander's office. She found him at his desk, looking tired but alert. His suit was impeccable as always, but the shadows under his eyes suggested the toll of international travel and pressing business concerns. "Elena," he stood when she entered, his expression a mixture of relief and uncertainty. "It's good to see you." "Is it?" she asked, maintaining a professional distance. "I wonder, given what's happened while I was away." Alexander gestured for her to sit. "Rebecca called you." "She did. And I've spent the night reviewing the changes Victor has implemented. Changes that undermine everything we built with the Tokyo merger." "It's not what you think," Alexander began, but Elena cut him off, placing her tablet on his desk. "These are the metrics from the first integration phase. Satisfaction among Tokyo executives has dropped 30% since Victor accelerated the timeline. 2 key relationship managers have resigned. Client retention is already showing concerning patterns." Alexander studied the data without speaking. "What I can't understand," Elena continued, "is why you allowed it. You supported my approach. You saw its effectiveness. Was it all just theater?" "No." Alexander's response was immediate and forceful. "Everything I said about your approach was genuine." "Then explain this," Elena demanded, "because from where I stand it looks like you used my absence to let Victor dismantle my work." Alexander sighed, running a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration from a man usually so composed. "I've been distracted, yes, but not in the way you think. The Dubai acquisition has consumed my attention, but more importantly, I've been dealing with a board insurrection." Elena's anger faltered. "What?" "Victor used your absence to convince several board members that your cultural approach, while intellectually sound, was too slow and costly for GCI's quarterly objectives. Howard supported him. They moved while I was in Dubai negotiating the new acquisition." "And you couldn't stop them?" Elena found this hard to believe given Alexander's authority as CEO. "I could have forced the issue," he acknowledged, "but at significant political cost within the board. I made a strategic decision to let Victor implement some changes while I secured board support for the Dubai deal. Once that was approved yesterday, I planned to address the Tokyo situation." Elena processed this information, her professional assessment battling with personal disappointment. "You sacrificed my division for a new acquisition." "I made a tactical retreat, not a surrender," Alexander corrected. "The Dubai deal strengthens our overall position. And now that you're back, with concrete evidence of the negative impacts of Victor's approach, we can reverse the most damaging changes." It was a rational explanation, the kind of strategic compromise that corporate leadership often required, yet it left Elena unsettled. "You could have warned me." "I respected your need for space," Alexander replied. "You went away to focus on your dissertation without corporate distractions. I didn't want to pull you back into GCI politics." There was truth in this, but not the complete truth. Elena sensed something unspoken beneath his reasonable explanation. "What aren't you telling me, Alexander?" He held her gaze for a long moment, then sighed. "I was hurt. When you left so abruptly after that evening in my penthouse, it felt like rejection, not just of what was developing between us, but of the vision we were building at GCI." The admission surprised her. "I needed to complete my dissertation. My academic career was at risk." "I know that intellectually," he acknowledged, "but emotionally, it felt like you were choosing between GCI and academia, between me and your previous life." The vulnerability in his admission shifted something in Elena. She had been so focused on her own difficult balance that she hadn't fully considered how her departure might have appeared to him. "I wasn't rejecting you or GCI," she said more gently. "I was trying to preserve both parts of my life, and I succeeded. My dissertation draft is complete." Alexander's expression brightened. "That's wonderful. Congratulations." "Thank you." Elena paused, then added, "But I came back to find the professional structure I built here being dismantled. That matters to me, Alexander. What we created with the Tokyo approach works. It's not just academically sound, it's good business. I know, he agreed. And now we'll fix it. Together. He reached across the desk, his hand outstretched. Partners again? Elena hesitated, then took his hand. Professional partners, certainly. The rest is more complicated. Because I'm your boss. Because I'm not convinced our priorities align, Elena clarified. When crisis hit, you made choices that protected your board position and new acquisition at the expense of work I built. That makes me question how you value what I bring to GCI. Alexander withdrew his hand slowly. That's fair, but I hope you'll allow me to demonstrate that I do value your contribution tremendously. Actions, not words, Elena replied. Then let's act. Today, call an emergency meeting with your team and the Tokyo representatives. I'll be there to publicly reverse Victor's most damaging changes and reaffirm our commitment to your cultural integration approach. His decisiveness was encouraging, but Elena remained cautious. And Victor? Will need to adapt or reconsider his position at GCI, Alexander stated firmly. I've allowed him significant latitude over the years, but not at the expense of our company's international strategy, especially not when we have data proving your approach's superiority. By midday, Alexander had made good on his promise. In a tense meeting with Elena's team, Tokyo's representatives, via video conference, and Victor himself, Alexander systematically reversed the most problematic changes, citing Elena's data on negative impacts and reaffirming GCI's commitment to the original cultural integration framework. Victor sat stiffly through the meeting, his expression carefully neutral, though his displeasure was evident. When Alexander finished, he addressed Victor directly. Your operational efficiency expertise remains valuable, Victor, but it must work within our cultural framework, not against it. Elena's approach has been validated by results. I expect all executives to support it moving forward. It was a public reinforcement of Elena's position that left no room for misinterpretation. As the meeting concluded, Elena felt a complex mixture of professional vindication and lingering personal uncertainty. Alexander had backed her approach completely, yet questions remained about their relationship beyond GCI's walls. Those questions followed her through the subsequent weeks as they worked to restore the original integration plan and repair relationships with Tokyo Communications. Alexander was consistently supportive, giving her full authority to rebuild what Victor had dismantled, yet he maintained a careful professional distance, respecting the boundaries she had implicitly established upon her return. A month after her confrontation with Alexander, Elena received news that her dissertation had been accepted with minor revisions. That evening, she found a champagne bottle on her desk with a note in Alexander's handwriting. Congratulations, Dr. Russo. GCI is privileged to have your brilliance in both academic and corporate realms. The thoughtful gesture touched her. As the day ended, she made her way to Alexander's office, finding him alone reviewing documents. Thank you for the champagne, she said from the doorway. He looked up with a genuine smile. You deserve it. Few could accomplish what you have in both worlds simultaneously. It hasn't been easy, Elena admitted, entering his office. And I'm not sure it's sustainable long-term. Alexander set down his papers, giving her his full attention. What are you saying? I'm saying that I've been thinking about my future, at GCI and beyond. Elena took a deep breath. The past month has shown me that I can succeed here, that my approach has value, but it's also shown me how quickly corporate priorities can shift, how vulnerable innovative approaches can be to political currents. That's true in any organization, Alexander pointed out. Academic departments have their own politics. They do, Elena acknowledged. But the question I've been asking myself is where I can make the most meaningful contribution while staying true to my values. And I'm not sure a traditional corporate role is the answer. Alexander studied her, concern evident in his expression. Are you resigning? No. Elena smiled slightly. I'm proposing a modification to my role. I want to establish a cross-cultural communication institute within GCI, a hybrid entity that conducts research, develops frameworks, and implements best practices across our global operations. A think tank within a corporation, Alexander mused, intrigued. Exactly. It would combine academic rigor with practical application. I could continue contributing to scholarly research while directly improving GCI's international operations. Alexander considered the proposal thoughtfully. It's unorthodox, but potentially powerful. We could position GCI as a thought leader in global communication. And I could maintain my academic connections while applying research in real-world contexts, Elena added. A genuine integration of both worlds. I like it, Alexander decided. Draft a formal proposal and we'll present it to the board. Elena nodded, pleased by his receptiveness. As she turned to leave, Alexander spoke again, his tone more personal. Elena, wait. There's something else we should discuss. She paused, hearing the shift in his voice. These past months have shown me something important, he continued. Not just about business, but about life. About what matters beyond corporate success. And what's that? Elena asked softly. Balance, connection, a future that includes more than just quarterly results and acquisitions. He met her eyes directly. I've built a global company, but I've neglected to build a life outside it. Working with you has made me realize what I've been missing. Elena felt her heartbeat quicken. Alexander, I'm not asking for an immediate answer, he assured her. But I want you to know that my feelings for you go beyond professional admiration. I see a future that could include both of us, building something together, not just at GCI but personally, a partnership, a family even someday. The unexpected mention of family caught Elena by surprise. Children? Yes, Alexander admitted with a vulnerability she'd rarely seen in him. I've spent my life building a corporate legacy, but lately I've been thinking about a more personal one, and when I imagine that future, you're part of it. The honesty of his confession touched her deeply. For months, she had been balancing professional and academic identities, never fully resolving how Alexander fit into either. Now he was offering a third path, one that integrated all aspects of her life into something new and uncharted. I need time, she said finally, to establish this institute, to find my footing in this hybrid role, to be sure of what I want beyond GCI. Take all the time you need, Alexander replied. I've learned my lesson about rushing decisions that affect your future. Just know that whatever you decide professionally, my feelings won't change. As Elena left his office, she felt a sense of possibility she hadn't experienced since that first morning at La Maison, when Alexander had watched her speaking 9 languages and seen potential she hadn't fully recognized in herself. The future remained unwritten, her institute to build, her relationship with Alexander to explore, her balance between academic and corporate worlds to maintain. But for the first time, these no longer felt like competing priorities but complementary elements of a uniquely integrated life. And that perhaps was the most unexpected translation of all. From seeming contradiction to harmonious whole, a future expressed in languages of both mind and heart. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen,